Hello, my name is Ed, and I'm with Freedom's Vanguard today. Today we're going to go over and discuss Machiavelli, Niccolo Machiavelli, and what I term a brief on Machiavelli, on his life, on the history surrounding his lifetime, as well as his most famous political essay, which was obviously Il Principe, or as we know it, The Prince. So here we go. Machiavelli was born on May 3rd of 1469 in Florence, which is northwest of Rome by about 140 miles. He was born the son of a scholar, so therefore he was highly educated. He was probably the most highly educated person, honestly, north of Rome, prior to maybe the Holy Roman Empire, and maybe even in all of Italy at the height of his career. The three main points to Machiavelli's life are as follows. The first was that the world was in an age of Renaissance. There was a clash of the Greek ideal, kind of this resurrection of Greek literature and Greek philosophy, which was at odds with kind of Christendom as a whole. These two ideas, these two notions of like a Greek society and a Christian society were not compatible in every way. Yes, they did have overlaps, but they also had very, very stark contrasts as well in terms of philosophical notions. And the last one was this growth of reason, okay? And all three of these ideas were kind of spinning, all three of these notions, ideas, whatever you want to call them, philosophies, were spinning around and at times clashed with one another. The next issue that was kind of present in Machiavelli's lifetime were the politics of the age, the politics of Europe. First, you had European royalty on kind of the mainland Europe, France, if you can term it such, Spain, the Holy Roman Empire, things of that nature, right? Habsburg's dynasty, and then obviously you had kind of Italy as a whole, which is kind of which takes us to the regional nobility portion, and the last was kind of church authority. Obviously, the Catholic Church was the only church at the time, and this led to a sort of conniving Christendom, where all of Christendom was at war with essentially one another, vying for power. And the last one was this threat of foreign invasion. The threat of foreign invasion was massive in this time, and it actually did occur in Machiavelli's lifetime. France was led by, I think, Charles VIII, with roughly a third of his force being made up of Swiss mercenaries, Langstronacs, which were very famous in this time period. Machiavelli eventually died on June 21st of 1527 at the age of 58 years old. So Machiavelli's Il Principe. This is a brief on what the whole of that kind of book was about. It's not really a book. It's actually more of a job application, really. But the whole style was written in a style known as Mirror for Princes. And this made the work exceedingly easy to read for anybody who was educated in this time period because it mirrored all the other styles of the age, right? But this also made the work more inflammatory because Machiavelli did not offer the usual advice that were found in these manuals in this style, in this Mirror for Princes style, and therefore it was considered a bastardization of it in the minds of both the church and academia and honestly the nobility. Although ironically enough, it wasn't necessarily the nobility that I think had a problem with what was being said. I think it was necessarily the fact that they were trying to look moral and good and just. So they intellectually kind of agreed with Machiavelli. However, they had to put on the appearance of not agreeing with him. Hence kind of that clashing of cultural ideals in this time during the Renaissance. And although maybe this might have been Machiavelli's point, as it was a job application to the Medicis. Okay, he kind of wrote this to get back into power after his beloved Florence was reconquered by the Medici family. And he was actually the one leading the opposition against the Medicis at the time it was reconquered by them. And so I think he was really trying to appeal to them. And the only way to do so was to make a very, very, very inflammatory work that would catch their attention. So Il Principe as a whole revolves around this quote, that a good prince must be a fox to discover the snares essentially ahead of him and a lion to terrify the wolves. That's basically the whole entire nature of this work. So why was it so inflammatory? The significance of it was that appearing the good Christian and deference to spiritual authority were always, at this point in time, considered moral goals for a leader to prioritize. And during this high Renaissance period, Machiavelli says unequivocally, no, this is ridiculous, and I have reasoning for this. And his reasons were kind of outlaid in Il Principe as a whole, but like I said, we're only going to go into one quote as to the significance of the whole work, which was the one I listed prior, about being a fox to avoid snares and a wolf to scare away the lions being obviously other nobles, other foreign leaders, and maybe even the church itself at that time, right? But the four kind of points he made in it were it was better to appear moral or good than to actually be good. So be pragmatic, basically. Do what you need to do, okay? Which is insanely inflammatory in this time period. The next point he made was it's better to have subjects fear you than to love you, okay? And his reasoning for that was love can be fickle. It can change. Passions can change, right? But fear is a constant. Fear drives people to irrationality, but it also can drive people to respect authority. The next point he made was that it's better to have state and local forces than mercenaries. And this was probably brought up because, like I said earlier, he was invaded by Charles VIII of France, with a large portion of his force being made up of foreign mercenaries. So we got to see and interact with these forces up close and personal and see what that meant for the entirety of I guess, the makeup of an invading force, or a defensive force for that matter. And the last point he really made in Il Principe was it's better to learn from past leaders' successes than their moral ideals. Okay, he references Caesar Borgia a lot in this work, and the reason he actually does is to give a pertinent example from the time period he lived in as to how to succeed, and to avoid the pitfalls that may be in front of a leader. And so for this reason, he was kind of the first political pragmatist. He was the consummate politician. I mean, he just lost a war against the Medicis, and a couple of years later, he writes essentially the greatest the greatest resume of all time, right? The greatest appeal to kind of get a job, which was, the prince. And he was also the first political scientist. Without a doubt, he was the first political scientist because he argued putting results and getting results before anything else. Nothing else mattered. Just the acquisition of power and the use of power to achieve results. And any way to achieve that power in his eyes was considered, I wouldn't say moral, but would be considered justified. Okay, and this was very inflammatory stuff. So that is Machiavelli in a nutshell. I hope you enjoyed this video. I was trying to keep it, as I said, a brief on Machiavelli and the significance of his lifetime, and the history of that time, and obviously the most famous job interview ever, as well as the most famous political science brief of all time. So I hope you really enjoyed this video. We will have more in the future. My partner Beowulf and I will be talking on this many a time, really debating philosophies and introducing you to ones that you already know and many that you don't already know, doing videos that range from essentially 3 minutes to 10 minutes in our kind of middle length videos to 30 minutes in our slightly longer ones. And then we're even going to have a longer version that is going to be roughly an hour, where essentially we debate ideas from the various perspectives of the men and women of the time, and ask the question, are these philosophies still pertinent and relevant in today's age? Okay, and we really hope you enjoy that, and we think you can actually draw a lot from it. We think that it will actually help you understand where the ideas of today came from, historically, and this is a great starting point in my mind. So thank you very much for your time. All right, bye.